Welcome to episode 131 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm talking with Stephan Bugaj and Justin Sloan, who run the Creative Writing Career podcast. Stephan and Justin have both worked in video games as writers and executives who hire writers. So if you've ever considered turning your writing talent into a career writing video games, you're not going to want to miss what they have to say. They also recently wrote a book where they interviewed a bunch of successful screenwriters and tried to gain a little bit of insight from their experiences. So we talk about that book and some of the lessons that they learned doing that book as well. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline inquiry letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So I'm now deep into production on my crime thriller feature film, The Pinch. We're shooting July 9th through July 29th, so I'm pre-recording a bunch of podcast episodes in late June, so I'll be able to keep publishing the podcast through July while I'm out shooting the film. I'm going to try and put out updates through the various social media channels, so please follow me on Twitter, and that's twitter.com/Ashley Myers, or like SYS on Facebook, that's facebook.com/sellingyourscreenplay, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/sellingyourscreenplay. And I just set up a new Instagram account, which is instagram.com/Ashley Scott Myers. I have someone who will be shooting some behind the scenes footage, so I'll try and get that posted to YouTube and Facebook as we're shooting. And I will have my cell phone and just snap some pictures, and I'll try and publish those to Twitter and Instagram. So keep an eye out for all of that and wish me luck. So I will keep new episodes coming out through July, but I won't be able to give real-time updates. So check out my various social media channels for those real-time updates on the shooting of The Pinch. And once the movie is completed, I'll be back and I'll give a full wrap-up of the entire process of shooting the film. So that's what I'm working on. So now let's get into the main segment. Welcome, Justin and Stephan, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So maybe to start out, you can give us just a quick overview of your background, kind of how you got started in professional writing, and just bring us all the way up to your current jobs.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, I got started in professional writing in the game industry, kind of actually creating games and VR experiences back in the 90s, and then I did a bunch of similar stuff on the web, and that involved writing as well as development. And then I worked at Pixar for almost 12 years, and while I was there, I was making movies, like creating, images on the screen and so on, but also studying screenwriting professionally, as well as studying, how to be a professional screenwriter, UCLA program and in-house Pixar program, and I ended up co-writing and co-developing 2 features in development that will never see the light of day. And then I left to be the creative development director at Telltale Games, where I oversaw 4 seasons of episodic gaming, 9 episodes while I was there, 2 season breaks, 2 season ends. And then I left to come down to LA and do my own thing. And I currently have 1 feature that was optioned and is out for financing right now, and a bunch of other projects in features, virtual reality, games, and so on that are either in development or written and will be coming out sometime in the future.
Perfect. Now, I just have a couple questions. So on IMDb, you're listed as a technical director on a bunch of projects. What exactly is a technical director?
Technical director is a catch-all term for people in the VFX and animation industry who do a variety of different creating image on the screen type of tasks. It can be anything from like senior render wrangler to visual effects artist, surfacer, modeler, rigger, so on and so forth.
Is your background, like, were you an artist? Like, you can sit down and just draw on pencil and paper? That was like your background getting into this?
Well, I can't draw as well as, say, an animator or other people like that. I draw okay. I'm more of a technical artist, so computer graphics, imagery, photography, and so creating CG images. Like, I worked as a surfacer, I worked as a cloth and hair simulation artist, I worked in compositing and rendering, procedural animation, and so I created CG images on the screen with the computer.
Okay, perfect. So, Justin, maybe we could get a kind of a recap on your career as well.
Yeah, so I started as more of a novelist and screenwriter, and through that got into video games. So I was over at the Federal Reserve, actually, doing Asia policy analysis, writing totally different. And I was just like, you know what, I need to stop this. I was having fun with my novels and trying to write screenplays and all that. And I was like, I just need to be a full-time writer. And so I started connecting with people all over the place on LinkedIn and whatnot, just saying, hey, do you have some time to spare with me? Stefano is one of these people. We contacted through email. Another guy who ended up working with me at Telltale later was one of these people who did some work at Pixar, and it all kind of came to fruition where, you know, the door of opportunity opened and I had all my work ready to go, submitted some samples, and went over to Telltale Games. And so I worked there for 2 years as a writer under Stefan. I worked on, you know, Game of Thrones, Tales from the Borderlands, Walking Dead Michonne, and Minecraft Story Mode, and had a lot of fun on that. I was a lead on one of the projects before I left. I recently left. I'm actually over pursuing another side of my passion right now at military.com, where I write articles for veterans trying to transition out, because I did a book called Military Veterans in Creative Careers, which is helping military veterans who want to go into screenwriting, acting, directing, stuff like that. And so right now I'm focusing a lot on my novels. I have 13 books in total out there, including the one that Stefan and I did together. And writing some screenplays. I have some stuff that I worked on with this story studio called Sterling and Stone, Sean Platt and those guys, and we're shipping it around right now, so fingers crossed.
Okay, perfect. So I want to dig into this to video game writing for a minute. It's something I know nothing about, but I know there's some listeners who are potentially interested in this. So you, Justin, mentioned that you had a bunch of samples and you submitted. What exactly do you create as a sample? Do you write a script for a video game? Is that a sample? Maybe you can just walk through sort of the what you create and then where you submit it.
Yeah, so I'll say my side, and I'm sure Stefan has opinions as a hiring director, which is a little different, of course, because he probably has preferences. From what I did only was the screenwriting side. So I basically just had some screenplays. I had a sitcom pilot, 30 pages, a little less than 30 pages, and a feature. I think at the time I submitted a drama, and that's what I had. I hadn't really pursued the idea of video game writing too heavily. It was more that I loved writing and screenplays, and I loved video games, and that kind of just came together perfectly. But I have seen people submit projects through Twine, which is a website where you can make this interactive narrative storytelling, and they actually just exported that to me, and I could click on it and go through the story they wrote. And so I've seen people do more the video game side of these, but for me it was pure screenwriting. Okay,
yeah, Stephan. So let's get your take on as someone who's hiring these people. What are you looking for with these submissions?
So at Telltale was particularly interested in character and story in a very TV writerly way. So I was looking at screenplay and teleplay, particularly original pilot samples, but also, in teleplays you also write sample episodes of your favorite shows. So I'd look at whatever people had that were either features or TV in order to judge their story development and character development abilities, and how well their stuff read on the page. At a game company that's maybe more of a mobile gaming or a AAA gaming type of company, they'd look at that sort of stuff, and that would certainly be valuable. And there actually are a lot of increasingly people are looking to see that you've done some kind of interactive writing. So creating something in Twine or Inform or one of the other interactive narrative platforms is not such a bad idea. And trying to put together a project with game developers, where it might be an indie game, a small indie game that you're the writer on, is also a good thing to do. Matt Ritter, a friend of ours who also worked at Telltale, he had started and hadn't quite finished, but had examples of a game that he'd created on his own with people that he brought in as developers. So it can be screenplays and teleplays. It can be interactive narratives through Twine or Inform or similar platforms. It can be a game that you've worked on before. So it's really kind of like what you've got, and then a lot of studios, if they like the what you've got, then they'll ask you to do basically a test where they'll give you some parameters of how to write in their style and ask you to do that and see how well you might adapt to what they're doing.
Okay, perfect. And so, Stephan, where would you find, when you guys were preparing to start a new game and you were hiring writers, where did you typically find these scripts? Obviously, Justin, it sounds like he's someone you connected with through LinkedIn. Was that typical? But where would you get these, find these writing samples?
Well, at Telltale, they used a hiring website where people would submit samples through that. And I mean, that's pretty common in the gaming industry, that writer jobs, when they are hiring new writers, will get posted as regular jobs, and it'll be a submission just like they do a portfolio submission for an artist. So they'll ask you they'll say, okay, we want 3 10-page samples, or send us a feature, or whatever it may be. They'll tell you in the job posting what they're going to read and what they're looking for, and that's very common in the game industry, for writer jobs to be posted, and also for it to be a staff job. Like, you'll be at the studio and you'll just be moved from project to project.
Okay. And exactly what websites are these types of ads posted on, like Mandy.com?
Yeah, I mean, the game industry, there's a lot of stuff that gets posted on a website called DICE. And there's...
Which is literally dice.com?
Yeah. And also... going to the websites of the game companies that you're interested in and looking to see what jobs they have posted. I mean, that's basically what Telltale did. Telltale would have it up on their website, and it would go to a job, like an employment handling service website that you would then do all of the work through, the submission work through there. And that's pretty common, that the companies will post on their website maybe a notice to DICE. They might email something out to International Game Designers Association mailing lists, and that's pretty much it. So you kind of need to keep an eye on the websites of the companies that you might be interested in working for.
Yeah, that said, I've seen a lot of postings go through Glassdoor and Indeed. What is it? The guys who are doing South Park, Ubisoft, they had some postings on there. Activision has something for LA for a writing assistant for the writer's room on the next Call of Duty. That's posted on Glassdoor.com. So you can find a lot of these through Glassdoor.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good tip. Now, Stephan, you mentioned that one other thing that people might want to look into doing is finding some indie gaming companies and writing something potentially, I guess, for free for these companies that are kind of real bootstrap startups. How would you go about finding some of these indie gamers that are starting, at the very bottom themselves and just building a company from scratch?
Going to events, joining online forums. It's basically personal networking. So at that very low level of let's just get it together, it's as much about how well those people like and trust you to deliver as how great of a writer you are. So it's about building a personal community and being someone that they like you, they want to spend time interacting with you on the long road to putting together an indie game with a shoestring budget, bootstrapping it yourselves, and they believe that you're going to do the work. So it's really going to events. whether it's GDC or local meetups or some combination of big industry events and local events, and meeting people, telling them who you are and what you're trying to do and what you're doing now to be a writer, and getting to know them, and they'll have ideas and you'll have ideas, and hopefully you'll find the people who click, because that kind of writing generally does not come from like a job call or anything along those lines, but rather who you know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I was just going to add.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that, like on screenwriting sites like ISA and InfoList. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, probably.
Yeah,
but I've seen a few game things come through that, where it's like these indie game places are like people getting together to try to start something. So take it for what it's worth. It's probably better to go the other routes where you can meet people in person. But there are some of these that I've come across.
Perfect.
Yeah, the thing to keep in mind with game writing is that games are a very developer-driven industry, and even more so than in filmmaking, the writer is pretty incidental, and so being a known quantity and someone who they see as a important part of the team and who they want to hang out with and bounce ideas off of, and if you're a writer but they can hang out with you and bounce like gameplay and art ideas off of you, and they like how you get involved in that conversation, it makes you more a part of the development team.
Yeah. So let's move in and talk about your podcast for a little bit. You guys run the Creative Writing Career Podcast. Maybe you can just kind of tell us what it's all about. Just give us your log line for the podcast.
Sure, I'll go with that. Basically, we are targeting writers of all genres. A big thing that I always promote, like this year I went to the Austin Film Festival as a speaker, and the big thing I was promoting there was that you should be ready for any door to open, so that you want your craft and skills and networking and all that to be at the level where if you're going to break in at video game writing or novel writing or screenplay writing, that you're ready for that. Or if you just start at one of those, that's fine too. You can still listen to the podcast, but we want to be there for all of those people. So we're giving advice on novel writing, on video game writing, on screenwriting, and we're having some awesome guests, such as Bob Goodman and writers of what was it? Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Neil Landau. Some awesome guests who come on the show could talk about these different approaches.
Okay, perfect. And if someone just was going to listen to like one or two episodes of your podcast, are there a couple episodes that you would want to highlight for them?
What do you think, Stephan?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the best ones for someone who's just going to listen to a couple would be the ones about breaking in, the ones that are specifically about how to go about just getting started and approaching your career that we did early on.
Yeah, the one that has gotten the most plays is called The Realities of Writing Careers. There are a few audio snafus in there, but overall it's gotten the most plays and the most positive feedback. So that one's cool. But we've also done some specifically where it's just the three co-hosts talking about like the reality of games and what makes a good story game, and same thing with novels and screenplays and how you can wait if you have to be in Hollywood or not, that kind of stuff. So we've had a few of those.
Okay. And this Realities of the Writing Careers, is that like an episode number? How could people find that? I'll link to it in the show notes, but if they're just scrolling through your list of episodes, how would they find that?
Yeah, it's probably episode like 4 or 5, and I can find out like while we're talking.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
so
probably
I'll
one of
link
those.
to it in the show notes, but yeah, just so people have some idea if they just go to your site. So let's talk about the book that you guys, I guess the book is kind of in conjunction with the podcast, Creative Writing Career 2. Maybe you can pitch your book and kind of tell us what that's all about.
Yeah. You want to go with that one, Stephan?
Sure. It's a book of advice about how to have a writing career. There's some stuff that Justin and I wrote about different aspects of writing as a career. There's a section that I'm particularly happy about notes, which is something that writers have to deal with and often have no idea how to deal with, and actually very few books out there really tell you anything about that. But it also includes a whole bunch of interviews about breaking in and staying in with a wide variety of really cool writers. We've got John August, the well-known screenwriter. We've got Richard Kadri, the New York Times best-selling novelist. We've got Michael Uslan, the executive producer of all of the live-action Batman films. We've got a really good selection of different writers, of screenwriters, video game writers, novelists. Kevin Tumlinson, our co-host on the Creative Writing Career podcast, is one of the people we interviewed for the book. And so it's got a lot of advice that doesn't just come from our own perspective, but we also went out to a bunch of our friends and got information and advice about how did they have a career and how that might apply to the readers.
Yeah. And I wonder if there's just some lessons that you guys have learned, some specific sort of lessons that you can impart to people.
For sure. And a lot of them are, stuff that you talk about on your show and stuff that we talk about on our show all the time. But some of them are like what we've talked about. Like we've had some writers on there who do write cross media, and they've kind of said the same things that we've been talking about, where you have to make sure that you're perfecting your craft first and foremost, and then building the network, because a lot of these jobs and opportunities come through who you know. And we've talked about the different ways they can do that, such as the writers' conferences or the Game Developers Conference here in San Francisco, and those kind of platforms. What else, Stephan? Anything else that's coming to the top of your head?
Sure. I mean, I would say that the best advice that I can give to writers is, 1, write, and write a lot. 2, don't give up, because 100% of writers who gave up never made it. And 3, be easy to work with. Be someone that people want to spend time working with. In Hollywood, there's a term called difficult to work with, which is a euphemism for I never want to see this person or be in a room with them ever again, and you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, that's sound advice for sure. And I don't think people fully understand it's not just the writing. Oftentimes it is all these other things. I wonder if you guys can just touch, and this is sort of maybe a broader question, what is it about writing that attracts people to it? And I honestly don't know for myself what it is. I mean, there's definitely something about it. And then my follow-up question is sort of, the fantasy of writing versus sort of the reality of the job. But what is it from all these different types of people that you've met in all different writing professions? What is it that sort of attracts people to it?
Yeah, I mean, my interpretation of what I've talked to people about and what my own writing is really just getting to understand characters. Like you look at people around you in the world, and there's just so many people that you just can't fathom how they got to how they are, or who they are. They're just so different, or some of them are just so emotionally touching. And when you get into writing, like, you get to explore these different avenues, and you get to take these people and put them in different situations and see how they'll react. And that's what I've seen shine through.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it's also being able to create worlds, characters, events, stories that show the world either as how they wish it was, or as a illustrative warning of how they hope that it does not become. And I think that's a great appeal of writing for a lot of writers, is to be the person who got to create the ideas and characters and worlds and scenarios that conjure up these ideas in other people's heads, whether it's a novelist doing that directly in their reader's head, or a screenwriter who is inspiring a director and cinematographer and so on to create a visual and audio experience for the audience that interprets that. It's being the person who inspired that whole process in the first place.
Yeah. And is all the writers and the different types of writing that you guys have sort of explored, interviewed people, are there any of those like real writing jobs where sort of the fantasy of that job meets the reality? Because in screenwriting, I don't think it really even comes close. I think most people's sort of fantasy of being a professional screenwriter is vastly different to what actual professional screenwriters do and what their lives are really like. But are there any writing jobs where the fantasy meets the reality?
Jobs implies reliability of getting paid. So, no. If someone pays you reliably, then that is specifically to eliminate the fantasy from your life. I think that, novelists probably have it the closest in that they get to play this lottery where they're in control of everything, and there's no guarantee that anything's going to come of it. And screenwriters and game writers are probably the furthest from it, which is those jobs are essentially the process of turning notes into a final deadline.
Yeah, let me hit on that because we have interviews with Will White on the podcast and in the first Creative Writing Career book, and Sean Platt in Creative Writing Career 2. By the way, the audiobook just came out for that, so I don't know if we mentioned that, but that's pretty exciting, and we're happy to give some of your listeners, let's say the first 10 people that email me, free copies of that. But hitting on the novelist side, both of those people, I feel like they're living the dream. They both communicate that they're living the dream. And basically, the first guy, Will White, he went into his MFA program, wrote a novel, it became a fantasy trilogy, and he graduated and hasn't had to work since. And it's just been awesome. And he's just writing more fantasy trilogies and doing quite well for himself. Jealous, very jealous. And then the other guy, he started a story studio with 2 other guys, and they basically just crank out books like nonstop. For a while, they were doing a book a week, which is kind of crazy. Now they've slowed down to more focus on the craft and making really good stories. But they're also living that dream of just writing novels all day long and having fun with it. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's great. So let's talk about just your book, just to wrap things up. How can people find your book? And then you can also mention your email address if people want to email you and potentially get a free audio copy.
Yeah, sure. It's on the podcast website, or just the website is creativewritingcareer.com, and we have links to the books on there, of course, as well. It's on Amazon, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Nook. It's on Kobo. It's on all these platforms, so that's great. The audiobook is on iTunes, Audible, and Amazon. And so that's easy enough. And then if you, like I said, if you want to email me, let's go with Justin Sloan author @gmail.com. So it's just Justin Sloan author. And then, like I said, happy to give first 10 people some free copies of that. So.
Okay, perfect. And I'll round this stuff up and put it in the show notes. So are you guys on Twitter or Facebook? Maybe you can just mention your Twitter handle and really anything you feel comfortable sharing so people can find you and just follow along with what you're doing.
Sure. Go ahead, Stephan.
Justin, you go first.
Okay, I'm at Justin M. Sloan, M as in Michael, Justin M. Sloan on Twitter, and then Facebook is the same as the email, which is Justin Sloan author, is the end of that part.
And I am on Twitter. I'm at Stephan Bugaj, Stephan Bugaj, and on Facebook. Search for my name. I actually have no idea how you.
Yeah. Okay.
It was confusing when I tried to do it. Hey, real quick too. Oh, if they sign up for the newsletter, they can get a free. It's called the Starter Guide, Creative Writing Career Starter Guide, and we have a little bit of book 1 in there, a little bit of book 2, and a little bit of Kevin's book, our co-host who wrote a book called 30 Day Author. So you can get that starter guide, and it has a couple of those interviews as well. So that's free. So that's cool.
Perfect. So, well, guys, thank you very much for coming on the show and talking with me. I really appreciate it. Lots of great information, and I think there'll be some screenwriters that are interested in gaming, so I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Ash.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We provide analyses on features and television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write a logline and synopsis for you. You can add this service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast from my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. That's the show. Thank you for listening.